In a part of the world that has gently slipped from memory and maps, there lies a place cradled by the arms of an ancient, sleeping forest. This place is known as the Whispering Glade. It did not earn its name from secrets shared between people, for people and their hurried footsteps rarely found their way here. Instead, the name comes from the voice of the wind itself. As it drifts from the high, silent hills, it learns a special kind of gentleness, and by the time it reaches the glade, it speaks only in soft, soothing whispers as it combs through the feathery tops of the tall grass and rustles the silver-bellied leaves of the birch trees that stand like silent, patient sentinels. In the very heart of this tranquil world, sheltered by the vast, gnarled roots of an oak tree that has seen 1,000 seasons turned, is the home of a very small creature named Pip. Pip is a dormouse, with fur the color of a perfectly toasted hazelnut and eyes like two polished beads of obsidian that hold the soft, curious light of the glade. His home is not merely a hole in the ground, it is a masterpiece of comfort, a burrow woven with care and time. The entrance is a perfectly round opening, shielded by a piece of curved bark that serves as a door, swinging silently on a hinge of tough, flexible vine. Inside, the air is always cool and still, carrying the comforting sense of sweet earth, dried chamomile, and the faint, reassuring perfume of old wood. The floor is not dirt, but a thick, springy carpet of moss, gathered from the north side of old stones, softer than any velvet. A single, tiny window, made from a piece of transparent river quartz that has been tumbled smooth by the water, is set deep into the earthen wall. It doesn't offer a clear view, but catches the sunlight and turns it into a diffuse, hazy glow, as if the burrow is filled with liquid gold in the mornings and soft lavender in the evenings. Pip awoke not to a sudden sound, but to a slow and gentle shift in this light. He blinked his dark eyes slowly, yawned a wide, whisker-twitching yawn that crinkled his nose, and stretched his tiny body from the tip of his nose to the very end of his long, furry tail. His bed, a hollowed-out mushroom cap filled with the impossibly soft fluff of cattails, was so cozy that leaving it was the most difficult decision of his day. He padded over to his small pantry, a nook in the wall where he kept his supplies. He drank a few drops of morning dew from a buttercup leaf he'd saved, its taste clean and fresh on his tongue. Then he nibbled on a small, sweet honey cake, a gift from his friend Beatrice the bee, and finished with a single, perfect sunflower seed. After his simple meal, he went about his morning ritual. He tidied his bed, fluffing the cattail down, and swept the mossy floor with a tiny broom made from stiff blades of grass bound with spider silk. Finally, his chores complete, he turned to his most prized possession. In a quiet corner of the burrow sat a small chest, meticulously carved from a single, large acorn. This was his sleepy time tea chest. With gentle care, he lifted the lid. Inside, in separate, tiny leaf parcels, were his ingredients: fragrant dried chamomile flowers, perfect lavender buds, and a pinch of sweet clover. But one spot, the most important one, was bare. The small, silk-lined compartment where he kept his moon petals was empty. "Oh, bother and whiskers," Pip whispered, his voice a tiny puff of air in the quiet of his home. A wave of gentle concern washed over him. He remembered using the very last one the night before, its silvery light fading as he dropped it into his tea. Moon petals were the secret to the most peaceful sleep, the final ingredient that turned his tea from merely calming into something magical. They bloomed only on a special flower in the moon petal meadow, a place a fair distance from his cozy burrow. A journey would be required. He looked out his quartz window at the soft, kind light of the morning. Well, he decided, a spark of gentle adventure replacing his concern, a journey it is. He prepared a small satchel woven from blades of grass, packing a single, juicy blackberry for energy. Before setting out, he made one stop. He padded over to the larger, more established burrow of his friend and neighbor, Barnaby, a wise old badger who lived on the other side of the oak tree. Pip found him carefully loosening the soil around a patch of wild carrots, his movements slow and deliberate. "Good morning, Barnaby," Pip chirped softly. The old badger looked up, his face, with its distinct black and white stripes, crinkling into a warm, gentle smile. "And a good morning to you, little Pip. You're out and about early. The sun is just beginning to warm the stones. Off on an adventure, are we?" "I am, in a way," Pip said, holding up his satchel. "I'm all out of moon petals, and I must travel to the meadow to gather a new one for my tea." Barnaby nodded, leaning on his digging stick. "Ah, the moon petal meadow. A worthy journey for a worthy purpose. It's a fine day for it. The air is clear and the sun is kind." He squinted at the sky with knowing eyes. "You know the way, of course. Across the gurgling creek and through the sun-dappled wood. Mind the stepping stones at the creek, a bit of morning mist can make them slick. And when you get there," Barnaby's voice grew softer, almost a rumble, "be patient. The magic of that place does not like to be rushed. Sit and watch the day turn to dusk. The flowers will give their gift when the time is right, not a moment before." "I will be very patient," Pip promised. "Thank you, Barnaby." "Safe travels, little one," the badger rumbled, returning to his carrots. "And bring the peace of the meadow back with you." With Barnaby's advice tucked safely in his mind, Pip set off. The journey to the gurgling creek was a pleasant one. He trotted along a path worn smooth by the tiny feet of countless woodland creatures. The air was filled with the scent of damp earth and the sweet perfume of clover, and he could hear the distant, happy drone of Beatrice and her fellow bees already at work. Soon, a new sound reached his ears, growing from a faint murmur to a pleasant, bubbly song. It was the gurgling creek. To a human, it would be a small, cheerful brook, but to Pip, it was a wide, rushing river. The water, so clear he could count the speckled green and gray pebbles on its bed, tumbled over smooth, mossy stones, creating little white waves that sparkled in the sunlight. He remembered Barnaby's words and looked for the stepping stones. There they were, a line of flat, gray rocks breaking the surface of the water. Taking a deep breath, he took his first leap, his small body landing securely on the stone. It was a little damp, just as Barnaby had warned. He paused, feeling the fine, cool spray on his whiskers, and listened to the constant, soothing rush of the water. Below him, he could see tiny minnows darting in the current, their scales flashing like scattered silver coins. He hopped to the next stone, and the next, a small, rhythmic dance across the water, until he reached the other side, his paws only slightly damp. He then entered the sun-dappled wood. The entrance was marked by two tall pine trees that stood like silent gatekeepers. As Pip passed between them, the world changed. The open, sunny air of the glade was replaced by a cool, green-tinted shade. The sounds became more hushed, more intimate. The chirping of birds seemed closer, the rustle of leaves more distinct. The air smelled deeply of pine needles and rich, loamy soil. Pip walked on a carpet of fallen pine needles, which was soft and springy under his paws. He was so absorbed in the beauty of the woods that he almost bumped right into a creature who was darting back and forth across the path in a blur of motion. "Whoa there! Busy, busy," the creature squeaked. It was Squeaky, a field shrew with a twitching nose and boundless energy. "Where are you off to in such a slow, leisurely fashion?" "Hello, Squeaky," Pip said calmly. "I'm on my way to the Moonpetal Meadow." "Meadow? Yes, yes. Keep on this path until you see the big, mossy boulder that looks like a sleeping toad. Go right. The squirrels moved the acorn marker, so it's definitely right. Then just follow your nose until you smell thyme. Can't miss it. Good luck. Got to go." And with a final twitch, Squeaky vanished into the undergrowth. Pip smiled. Squeaky was always in a hurry, but his heart was in the right place. He followed the directions, finding the toad-shaped boulder, and turned onto a less traveled path. Before long, the sharp, clean scent of wild thyme, growing in fragrant clumps, filled the air. The trees began to thin, and the light grew brighter. The path opened up, and Pip stopped, breathless. Before him lay the Moon-Petal Meadow. It was a vast, undulating sea of wildflowers, bluebells, poppies, cornflowers, and daisies all nodding together in the gentle breeze. The air hummed with life. He had arrived. Following Barnaby's advice to be patient, Pip found a perfect spot to wait. It was a patch of soft, deep green moss at the base of a slender silver birch tree, right at the edge of the meadow. From here, he had a perfect view of the entire expanse. He settled down, tucking his paws beneath him, and ate the juicy blackberry he had packed. Its sweet, tart flavor was a perfect treat after his long walk. And then, he simply watched. He watched as the world began to change around him, slowly and magically. The sun, which had been high and bright, began its slow descent, sinking toward the horizon and bathing the entire glade in a warm, golden light. This was the golden hour, when every color seemed deeper, every shadow longer and softer. The shadows of the trees stretched like sleepy arms across the meadow floor. The sounds of the glade began their evening shift. The busy, energetic hum of the daytime bees quieted down as they returned to their hives, their work done for the day. The cheerful, bustling chirping of the sparrows and finches was replaced by the softer, more melodic call of a single robin, singing its final, beautiful evening song from a high branch. Then, as the last sliver of sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the clouds in soft strokes of rose and lavender, a new sound emerged. It started with a single, hesitant chirp. Then another, and another from a different direction, until the entire meadow was filled with the gentle, rhythmic, and deeply calming chorus of crickets. Pip sat perfectly still, completely enchanted. He was not just waiting, he was a part of the moment. He felt the day's warmth slowly seeping out of the earth beneath him. He watched as the first, shy star pricked the deepening violet of the sky. The air grew cooler and carried a new scent, the smell of night-blooming jasmine and the dampness of the coming dew. A profound peace settled over everything, a deep, collective sigh as the world prepared to rest. Pip breathed it all in, his own heart slowing to match the calm, steady rhythm of the twilight. Just as the sky turned from the last shade of purple to a deep, velvety indigo, the moon began to rise. It was a perfect, shining silver disk, and it cast a gentle, ethereal light over the meadow. And then, the true magic began. Across the field, small, tightly closed buds began to stir. These were the moonflowers. Pip watched, his eyes wide with wonder, as their petals began to unfurl, not all at once, but slowly, gracefully, as if waking from a long and peaceful sleep. As they opened, each flower released a soft, silvery light of its own, a tiny echo of the moon above. The entire meadow began to shimmer, dotted with dozens of these small, living lanterns. A new fragrance filled the air, delicate and enchanting, like the scent of cool water and starlight mixed together. This was the moment. Remembering the respectful way Beatrice the bee had spoken of the flowers, Pip rose and padded silently into the glowing meadow. He did not rush. He walked carefully between the other sleeping flowers, his paws making no sound on the soft earth. He looked for a flower that seemed strong and bright, its light a steady, welcoming glow. He found one near the center of the meadow, its petals a perfect, luminous silver, pulsing softly. He stopped before it and bowed his head slightly, a small gesture of respect. "Hello," he whispered, his voice barely disturbing the still night air. "You are so beautiful tonight. May I have one of your petals for my sleepy time tea? I promise to be very grateful." The flower seemed to pulse with a slightly brighter, warmer light, a silent, graceful assent. Pip reached out a gentle paw and, with the lightest touch imaginable, he plucked a single petal from the bloom. It came away with no resistance, as if it were a gift freely given. The petal felt cool and smooth and strangely alive in his paw, and it hummed with a faint, calming energy. He held it carefully, his heart full of a quiet, deep thankfulness. "Thank you," he whispered to the flower, before turning to make his way home, the precious, glowing petal lighting his path. The journey back was an entirely different experience. The world, now bathed in the silvery luminescence of the full moon and the gentle glow of the petal in Pip's paw, was transformed. The sun-dappled wood was no longer dappled, but striped with the long, soft-edged, inky shadows of the pines. It was not frightening, but deeply mysterious and beautiful. The only sounds were the soft crunch of his own footsteps on the pine needles and, far in the distance, the soft, questioning hoo-hoo of a hunting owl. When he reached the bank of the gurgling creek, the sound was different, too. It was no longer a cheerful, bubbly song, but a deeper, more soothing murmur. The water, inky black, was laced with shimmering ribbons of reflected moonlight. The stepping stones gleamed like polished silver. He crossed them with the same care as before, but this time it felt like a slow, graceful dance under the stars. As he neared his home, he saw a familiar, comforting sight, a soft, warm light glowing from the burrow of Barnaby the badger. The old badger was likely reading by his fire, safe and warm. The sight made Pip's own burrow feel even closer, even more welcoming. He pushed open his curved bark door and stepped inside. The familiar, comforting scent of home, of moss, earth, and chamomile, enveloped him like a warm blanket. He was home. His first act was to take care of his new treasure. He padded over to his acorn chest, opened the lid, and gently placed the glowing moon petal into its silk-lined compartment. He closed it carefully and then turned his attention to the evening's main event, the ritual of the tea. He went to his small hearth, where a few embers from the morning still lay dormant. He added a few tiny, dry twigs and blew on them with a gentle puff of air. A small, cheerful flame flickered to life, and soon a single, larger piece of wood was burning with a steady, warm glow. The light danced on the curved walls, making the shadows sway in a slow, sleepy rhythm. He took his favorite acorn cup from its shelf and filled it with clean water from a small clay pot, setting it near the hearth to warm. While he waited, he gathered the other ingredients. He took a pinch of dried chamomile flowers, their scent instantly calming. He added 2 tiny, perfect lavender buds, which smelled of peace and summer fields. When the water was warm, he poured it into his cup. The chamomile and lavender swirled gently. Finally, he went back to his acorn chest and retrieved the very petal he had just carried all the way home. He held it for a moment, remembering the shimmering meadow and the quiet thankfulness in his heart. Then, he dropped it into the cup. Instantly, the water began to glow with a soft, pearlescent light. The petal swirled, releasing its gentle magic, turning the tea a beautiful, opalescent silver. The steam that rose from the cup did not just smell of herbs, it smelled of starlight and honey, of moonlight on quiet water. The tea was ready. Pip carried his glowing cup to his favorite chair, a little armchair carved from a smooth piece of driftwood and cushioned with soft lamb's wool. He sank into it with a deep sigh, the day's long walk making the comfort feel even more profound. The warmth of the acorn cup seeped into his paws, a delightful, spreading heat that felt like pure contentment. He held the cup just below his nose for a moment, inhaling the magical steam. The scent alone seemed to untie tiny, invisible knots in his muscles he didn't even know were there. He felt the alertness from his journey melt away, like frost in the morning sun. He took his first, tiny sip. The tea was warm and sweet, with the gentle flavors of the herbs and a unique, indescribable taste from the moon petal, a taste like liquid tranquility. He felt the warmth slide down his throat and spread through his chest, a slow, gentle wave of peace. It was as if the quiet of the moon petal meadow was now inside him. Outside, the sounds of the glade had fallen into their deepest slumber. The cricket chorus had faded to silence. The wind in the great oak tree's leaves was now the faintest shh, a sound so soft it was more felt than heard. A profound stillness had settled over the world, a silence that felt safe and protective. Pip took another sip of his tea. His eyelids began to feel heavy, as if tiny, smooth pebbles were resting upon them. The flickering light from his hearth seemed to slow down, its pulses of orange light becoming longer, lazier. The shadows on the wall swayed less and settled more, growing soft and indistinct at the edges. The world inside his burrow was slowing down, preparing for the deep, restorative quiet of the night. The last sip of tea was gone, and the beautiful, silvery glow in the acorn cup had faded. Pip placed the empty cup gently on the mossy floor. Rising from his chair felt like moving through warm water, his motion slow, dreamy, and deliberate. The pull of sleep was stronger now, a gentle but insistent current, pulling him toward the promise of his bed. He padded over to his mushroom-capped bed. He climbed in, the bed sighing softly as it took his weight. The cattail down was impossibly soft, a cloud of warmth that molded perfectly around his small, curled body. He pulled his blanket, a single large, soft leaf that still smelled faintly of sunshine, up to his chin. He lay there for a moment, curled into a tiny ball, his nose tucked into the fur of his tail. He could feel more than hear the deep, slow rhythm of the world around him. He felt the ancient, sleeping strength of the oak tree's roots that formed the walls and ceiling of his home. He felt the steady, peaceful heartbeat of the entire whispering glade, now at rest under the watchful eye of the moon. Everything was safe. Everything was calm. Everything was as it should be. His thoughts began to drift, no longer clear and sharp, but soft and hazy, like clouds on a summer day. He saw a brief image of the shimmering meadow, a flash of Barnaby's kind smile, a whisper of the creek's song. They were not worries or plans, but soft, pleasant memories, floating by one last time before dissolving into the quiet dark. He took one last, deep, sleepy breath, and let it out in a tiny, contented sigh. That final breath carried away the last of his wakefulness, leaving only a profound sense of peace. There was nothing left to do now but rest. Nothing to think about but the gentle quiet. And as Pip the Dormouse drifted into a deep and profound slumber in his cozy burrow, you can drift away, too. Into the quiet, into the calm, into the peaceful dark. Drifting, floating, sleeping, deep, asleep.